right? Just crazy stuff. Crazy, crazy, crazy. Oh, crazy. Crazy people. Let's cue it up. Let's start it. Let's roll. Let's do this thing and start this ball rolling. It's Wednesday, April 1st. Did I want to say that? And if anybody comes with an April Fool's Day joke, it's not in good taste. Come on. Not today, not this April Fool's Day. It doesn't feel like we just want to play a
Your
prank.
show will go live in 5
We don't want to
seconds.
do that,
4, 3,
right? Now
2,
people are facing massive
1.
unemployment. So, hey everybody, good morning. Welcome to Down to Earth. It's the show in which we talk about the issues that matter. There are a lot of issues to talk about, as always, because today is the first day of April, traditionally celebrated as April Fool's Day, but this year we're not even going there. We're not going to do that this year. We're not going to talk about April Fool's Day because it's in bad taste. Because today, for a lot of people, it's not a foolish thing. A lot of people have rent due today for which they're hoping their landlords can understand. I read a story on the New York Times that says 43 million Americans live in rental spaces. That's too much. Really, that's too much. We should do a better job of making sure more people are in their own homes. Because at least if you're in your own home and you miss a mortgage payment for 1 month, they're not going to put a notice on your door and then evict you. They're at least going to give you time to pay the mortgage and you have some time to recover, which is what we all need right now, time. Time has become our best friend. We used to be such a frenzied society, always on the run, always busy. And guess what? We just suddenly found out that we have a lot of time. So I'm hoping and praying that the stimulus checks will be released by the 6th of April so that a lot of people can get some relief and pay their rent so they can at least have housing. We're going to pray for what happens in May and June because chances are that might be a bit tough. So a lot of folks have decisions to make going forward based on your own financial situation and based on your job and how the job is responding. You might have to make a decision. Maybe I need to go back home, or maybe I need to go move somewhere else because you won't be able to make the rent in May. And if you won't be able to make the rent in May, claim hardship from now and don't waste your stimulus check paying rent for a month when you could be using it to go back to move back home. Think about it. It's a decision that a lot of folks are going to have to make today. So we're going to pray for our brothers and sisters, our friends who are caught up in this whole situation. In the meantime, COVID-19 is rampant. It's running through our communities all over the country. I saw somewhere in Florida, saw a note yesterday. Somebody sent me a note saying that there are 6,000 cases in Florida. That is the craziest thing I've ever heard. Now, the governor of Florida is Republican, and he doesn't want to release numbers because they're in this big conspiracy to hide it because the Republicans know they did something wrong. So they have politicized a national health crisis when it shouldn't have been politicized. And because of their ineptitude and politicizing it, now they want to blame everybody else. No, you kind of politicized it. It didn't have to be political. It was a health crisis that was affecting all of us. And what we needed was for all of us to come together to try to figure a way out. But instead, they started politicizing it, and now it's become a health crisis, right? It's interesting to note, though, that if you notice, most cases of the virus are in Black communities, Black and brown communities. Are you guys noticing that, or is it just me? There's something to that. We need to think about it because this virus came from China, then went to Italy. But when it comes to the United States, it's primarily in Black and brown communities. There's something wrong with that mix. Trust me, something is wrong there. And we're going to find out at the end of it. I saw an article, I'm not sure which one of the periodicals it was, but members of Congress are asking state health departments to start releasing demographics because they're painting it as if it's only in Black and brown communities. And we know that that's not true because the virus was in China. That was the epicenter. right? And then it moved to Italy, then Spain, then the UK. So how come when it came to America, it's suddenly only in black and brown communities? There's something wrong with that picture. And I want everybody to pay attention and to start asking questions. Ask questions, you will get answers. You'll be surprised. But if you don't say anything, they ain't gonna say anything. They're gonna keep making it look like it's your fault unless you fire back and say it's not me. You have to say something. Don't let them tell you you're being defensive. You got to say something, right? You have to say something, right? So, how are you all doing? How are you doing? I'm asking everybody to check in and tell me how are you doing mentally. I was texting a friend of mine last night, and it's COVID, so you can't go out and socialize. And he was saying how he and his wife, they've been married for a long time, and he's like, cabin fever is killing everybody. So they take stages, they take rotational shifts. He's on the deck, she's down. They rotate out. All they do, they talk to each other by text, minimizing the contact. And I was like, dang, is this what it has come down to? All right. So I just want to know, is this what it has come down to? A lot of people are finding ourselves, you're stuck together. So, all those marriages where I'm going to get a divorce and leave you, da, 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 da. All of a sudden you find that you're stuck together. And guess what? You're facing unemployment. One person in the union, in the group, is probably facing unemployment. So all of a sudden you won't be able to survive on your own as you thought you would. All of a sudden that other spouse becomes your significant other. So COVID is probably going to save a lot of marriages, right? It probably is going to save a lot of relationships and a lot of marriages. And then, of course, you have college kids who have come home and they're as antsy as anything because they're not accustomed to sitting still and they're not accustomed to confinement. Good Lord, have mercy. I don't want to be in that position right now, right? It's enough. I haven't gone away from home in a week. It's like 10 days. Yesterday, I thought I was going to go crazy. I drove the car though. Yeah, I went around the block and you should have seen me. Dude, I backed up, like just put it in reverse. And I went, "Ugh." I was like, I got to get it out. I got to get my freeway driving out. Do I still have freeway driving skills? Are you all wondering about that? Have our driving skills gone? We haven't practiced them in a while. So I wanted to know. I found myself asking that yesterday. What happened to my driving skills? What happened to my freeway driving skills? If I don't get back on a freeway to drive, I'm probably going to lose my driving skills. I kid you not. I kid you not. I did rediscover my cooking skills that I really, I can cook. I've always known that I can cook, but it's by choice to cook. No, it's necessity because you don't want to order too much takeout because you don't know if the person preparing the food isn't on COVID. So you're like, it's safer to. And then you want to conserve your money because you don't know. We really don't know how long this is going to be. The president yesterday painted a grim picture of what he thinks. And the rest of us are like, duh, we knew this. You should have said this from January or February. We would be in a better place. But instead, you waited till now to tell us when the virus is already running rampant through communities. It's just crazy. So, but the good news is the stimulus checks are going to come out. They're going to start coming out. So you all need to, when you get them, make some qualitative decisions about what you're going to do. So yesterday, I let it rip on the city of Detroit and the mayor of Detroit. We all know that Detroit has had some challenging times. And in those challenges, I think, when you're fixing something, you kind of fix the top and the outward look of it, but you haven't gotten to the apparatus, the machinery that actually makes the engine run. Well, that's what's happening with the city of Detroit. They fixed the head, so they got a new mayor. They fixed the face of it, so it looks shiny and clean and scrubbed down. But the apparatus that runs the engine haven't gotten that fixed yet. So the water department still have some workers who are operating on the 1970s mentality. They don't do their job. So they haven't cleared the drains in the water basins around the city. So due to heavy rains, the place flooded. The people's basements were flooded, water was coming up. People were like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. Called Roto-Rooter. Roto-Rooter says they have more calls from the city of Detroit. They're deluged with calls. They actually can't make appointments except 48 hours in advance. So I let it rip on the city of Detroit. I let it rip on the mayor of Detroit. They need our angst. And I suspect that this is probably not just happening. If it's raining somewhere, it's probably happening in cities like New Orleans or Baltimore or somewhere. You need to get to Twitter and let them know, whether they call you an armchair activist or a hashtag activist, doesn't matter. You get their attention. That's what matters. Let them know that this is untenable. You need to fix the parts of your city that are not working. Why are you letting water back up in people's basements in the midst of a global health crisis and in the midst of a public health disaster? Why is that happening? Do you see what I mean? These are the issues the city of Detroit needs to pay attention. Listen to me very carefully. I spoke to someone a couple days ago. Her water bill is $5. The actual amount of water she used, she lives alone in a 2,600 square foot house. The actual amount of water she used that she was billed for is $5. But with taxes and fees, her bill was $73. Why are we paying more taxes and fees on water that runs through the Great freaking Lakes? I don't want to talk about it because see, I'm going to let it rip again and start again. That they have to do something about it. They need to do something about it. You change it all, change the apparatus because the workers are not doing their job. The drainage basins have not been cleared. So the water is backing up in the midst of a public health crisis. Do you see what I mean? This is the craziest freaking thing I have ever heard. Just crazy. And, people are like, I just want to spread love and light. And I'm like, I want to spread love and light too. But these are the issues. When I talk to people and they say these things are happening, I can't just say, well, love and light is going to take you through. No, I have to notify the mayor and the city of Detroit that this is something you need to pay attention to. And if I say love and light to you, Mr. Mayor, he's going to smile and wave. But if I say, dude, you need to fix this, guess which one he's going to respond to? Dude, you need to fix this. Because he doesn't want a bunch of angry people who probably are not going to be enthused about voting again. Right? It's just the craziest thing. We're in the midst of a public health disaster. Let me give you some background, right? So I grew up in a third world country. I grew up in Montego Bay, Jamaica. And according to the World Health Organization standards, you should never have standing water anywhere. You should always have running water. Now, thankfully, I grew up with running water. But for people in the outlying, especially in the rural areas, whenever there were seasons like this time of the year when the mosquitoes would come out, they would always have all this stuff plastered across. You had to be aware of it, blah, blah, blah. Now, I lived in the city, so naturally I was surrounded by city-operated services, right? Now, having that kind of background and understanding how public health, and a good friend of mine was a public health physician. Yes, she actually was the public medical health officer. Yes, she was. She went to a lot of these international conferences with the United Nations. And in fact, at one point, she was Jamaica's representative to the World Health Organization. Yes. So when I say that I know what I'm talking about, I do know what I'm talking about. So some of the things that I have seen happen in Detroit were never conducive to the public health, the good of the public health. Based on my background and based on what I know. So it kind of was like, why did you turn the water off on people in the first place? It wasn't Kwame. It wasn't the previous mayor who did it. It was this sitting mayor. They made a qualitative decision based on numbers and money to turn the water off on over 2,000 residents in the city. That created a public health disaster. Because if people don't have running water, how are they going to wash their hands? Just think about it. How are you going to flush your toilet? That's the first thing. I can't wash my hands. I can't flush my toilet. I can't do my laundry. They didn't care. And this is where people say, well, this is a Democrat or a Republican thing. No, this is an issue of bias. This is racism. This has nothing to do with politics. This is racism, plain and simple. Because if there were more white people living in the city of Detroit, the white mayor would never turn the damn water off. Let's just be clear. Aren't you all nodding your heads? No. If there were white people living in the city of Detroit, the white mayor would not turn the damn water off. So it becomes a question of, this is how our implicit biases emerge. They're in there somewhere. We are in places of public policy now. So we're trying to appear to be non-biased, to be unbiased. But instead, our own implicit biases emerge inherently, unwittingly, without us even being realized, without us realizing that we actually applied that. So they made a decision to turn the water off on people, and now we're in the midst of a public health disaster. So the governor said, turn the water back on. They came up with a policy where if people call them and make $25 arrangements, so the governor had to sign an executive order and say, turn the damn water on. Turn the damn water on. Why would you turn the water off on people in the United States? Why is the water bill so high? Why are the rates that you tax people for water so high, higher than surrounding cities around Detroit? You see where I'm coming from? These are the issues. And it makes no sense that you try to, every time I say, no, I'm not going to say anything, I'm going to stay out of it, I'm not going to say anything, it's not my fight, it's not this, it comes right up before me. Now, when you talk to people who say, I'm sick and tired of my basement flooding, I'm sick and tired of this happening, when it is the city's freaking fault, they will not send the damn workers out. No, they didn't have furloughed workers. Their workers are getting paid because they work for the city government. So whether they work or not, they were still getting paid, but the drains were not being cleared because they don't care. It's the craziest thing I've ever heard. It's one of the things that it rancors really deeply, because I don't know how anybody, any politician in the city of Detroit think they're going to get reelected with these kind of stuff. It's foolishness. It really is foolishness. It makes me want to ask, where's Reverend Sheffield? But he tested positive for COVID. So I can't even get him on the phone to ask him, what do you have to say about it? Reverend Sheffield is laid up right now, right? It's the craziest thing, right? It's the craziest thing. So what I wanted to, but do you see how this impacts the public health? If you don't have running water, how are we going to cope? And people are like, it is what it is. No, it isn't. You're paying for the water. Therefore, you should have services where they come out and clear the drains. That's the least service that they can perform. It's just ridiculous, right? Just totally ridiculous. So today I want to talk about something else that's grabbed my attention, and it's that nonprofits are closing. Any of you work for a nonprofit? You probably are on furlough because the nonprofit you work for ran out of money. And at this time of the year, it's typical for spring fundraisers going forward, right? Before we enter into the summer season, right? And we have lots of grants to submit, but who are we going to submit them to? So I read on the New York Times, a lot of nonprofits in the New York City area, smaller nonprofits, the larger foundations are rushing to get money to them. And here's why you probably are saying, well, why are nonprofits important? Typically, nonprofits provide services. They're called NGOs, non-government organizations. They provide services where the city, county, state, federal government drops off. So the government will typically give grants to another organization and another one, and then a nonprofit gets the money, and it provides services to the people of the community where the government does not have an agency established for that. That's why nonprofits are important. So the government recognizes that, hey, I have 364 million people here. They say they counted 323 a few years ago. I'm still rolling my eyes like, where did the rest go? No, there are a lot more people here than are counted, especially in this census. A lot of people are not going to get counted. The census should be done over, by the way, because it's not going to be accurate, right? So a lot of people who need services are not able to go to where the service provider is, especially a government agent. Well, that's where a nonprofit comes in. Typically, they're located right in the midst of the community where the service is needed and where the service is provided. So this is set up to help and accommodate people who perhaps can't take a bus, can't drive anywhere to get to where they need the service to live. And there are lots of services, there are a whole slew of services that are provided by nonprofits. Matter of fact, I'm one of them, right? I am self funded, which means that I have been funding my own nonprofit. So I'm not likely to close because I have always been self funded. They never gave me any money, I never got any government money. So I've been collecting from donors and real time donors and myself to keep it going, right? But there are other nonprofits that are closed now because they simply can't pay their workers. So you might ask, well, a nonprofit is a tax exempt status, a, apportioned by the IRS. It just means that you don't pay taxes as a nonprofit, right? But you provide a service. So your assets and so on, you don't pay taxes on them. But the government has limits on what you take in, right? They set it up so it has restrictions. You have to go to irs.gov for more information. I'm not an accountant, so I can't give it any specifics, right? All right. So having done that, now we have to look at, well, what kind of services are provided. You would be surprised what kind of services that nonprofit. You don't even know that a company, an organization working in your community is a nonprofit. And a lot of those folks, because they're not getting funding, because the people who used to give us money suddenly found themselves without money. They're not as flush as they were 2 months ago, because then they had to conserve, right? And perhaps spend money to do stuff for themselves. They are not as flush. So large corporations like the Carnegies and the Vanderbilts and so on are rushing right now to give out money to nonprofits to keep them going, because not just for the community members that they serve, but for the folks who work there. Those people have families. If they don't work, they can't pay their rent, they're not going to be able to survive. These are the issues. I know it's sticky, but we kind of went along with it because when the pandemic first started and they were warning our leaders that this was coming, nobody came up with a plan how to save people, to save community members, and to save organizations that provide resources to community members. By the time we all realized we were hit and we're in the midst of a public health dramedy that we're all trying to survive in, including nonprofits. This is why sometimes when you hear me say give to organizations in your area that are providing services, a lot of the services they provide, like Meals on Wheels. We've all heard of Meals on Wheels. They provide community-based healthcare applications for folks who can't get to a hospital, or they can't get to a doctor. They provide a lot of community-based. They provide shelters. Shelters are invariably nonprofits. In this economy and at this time of our national consciousness, there are a lot of people who are facing what we call domestic violence, where they live in a home and home is not a safe place. Whether it's an intimate partner, such as a spouse or boyfriend or live-in partner, as well as domestic violence from other family members. In close quarters, people are worried about money. People start picking a fight about, you just ate yesterday, you should not be eating today. People pick a fight. Well, why are you driving? Why are you driving the car out? Because we're all living under the microscope of not having enough and fear that we won't be able to recover. When we should really be focused on what we have is for us. We have to protect what we have because it's for all of us. So these kinds of conditions are contributing to what we call domestic violence. There's an uptick in domestic violence. As a matter of fact, shelters across the country are reporting that a lot of people are moving into shelters because they simply can't take the violence at home. It's one thing to think about this stupid pandemic that is a public health creation, a public health disaster. But on top of that, domestic violence has now become a public health disaster. Do you see? So a lot of nonprofits provide services to shelters. Then there are shelters for homeless folks. community agencies that provide services to the homeless. They provide services such as they can come in, shower, use the internet for a day. You know, these things happen under normal circumstances, they happen. Well, now under this, they're exacerbated, right? So the homeless come in, sometimes they go into places where they can have a shower, and they will tell them, well, you showered yesterday, you can't shower today, right? So they have places where they go in and shower. You remember some time ago I talked about how bad the homeless situation was in LA, and how people got together, and they would sleep in car parks in their cars, and they would pay someone to watch over them, and then they would go into gyms and so on to have showers. Have you wondered where those people are perhaps having a shower now because they can't join a gym? They can't get into a gym to have a shower. Well, nonprofits provide those kinds of relief services. Nonprofits also provide services to recovering addicts, people recovering from drugs. Nonprofits like mine provide services to victims of human trafficking, survivors of human trafficking who are left homeless. Nonprofits also provide therapy services. That's why we say call 211 in your city, and you can find a therapist through United Way. United Way is one of the largest nonprofits, so is the Red Cross. To give you some idea of what nonprofits are, right? So a lot of them are closing because they were operating on a strict, on a stringy budget in the first place. Maybe that's why when I set up, people were like, you sure you want to do this? Because they probably thought I was going to age out pretty quickly and have gray hair sprouting everywhere and so on. But, glam girl here is going to look good when the fight is on or when the fight is off. I'm going to look good in spite of, right? But it is what it is. Most nonprofits are started on a dream. For instance, you lost a child to gun violence, or lost a child to drunken driving, or lost a spouse to a disease or something. And people create this dream, and around this idea, they rally around the idea of preventing this or helping another family who might be going through the same thing. Most American companies started on a dream. Somebody said, I have a dream that I can do this. Even Carnegie, he had a dream that he could create a company called Standard Oil, and take the oil out of the ground and distribute it across America. And he would make money. That was a dream, and he lived to see it. His descendants are still doing it today. So most nonprofits are started on a dream. You'd be surprised that the National Football League, the NFL, is a nonprofit. Why? That's a question we all want to know. Why is the NFL a nonprofit, and they sell heaps and millions in ticket sales and in merchandise? Why should the NFL be a nonprofit? But under the laws, they were incorporated as a nonprofit, so they're enjoying tax-exempt status. Jeff Bezos doesn't pay corporate taxes based on how Amazon, based on how the tax structure is set up, which is a crime against humanity, right? It just surely is, right? So when you look at the landscape and the corporate landscape, you begin to realize that a lot of what we consider to be everyday life has been impacted by the virus. How are these nonprofit organizations going to continue if they don't get a lifeline? They were already operating on stringy budgets. And just by the way, they don't just give you a grant, they're huge reporting requirements. Oh my God, you have to send in this report, send that report. So now they're going to minimize the reporting requirements. And a lot of it was just put in to safeguard the fact that if I'm going to give you $5 million, I want to know that you're not going to go buy a house in the Pacific and take off, that you're actually going to deliver the service that you say that you plan to, right? So a lot of nonprofits, then they employ people. What happens to those workers? Because some of that work can't be done from home. Imagine there's a meth clinic. You can't treat those people from home, from your living room. You have to go in to provide that service. In cases where you have a shelter, you have to be there to provide services to the people who might be coming in from the shelter. And you don't know what they're coming in with. They could be coming in with a public health situation. You don't know, right? So nonprofits are integral part of the tapestry of American life. They provide much needed services on the ground. In fact, people in public policy. This is why when you look at the current president, for instance, you realize that he really does not understand how the system is structured and how it works, because governors and state representative and other presidents understood this factor of American life, that nonprofits exist. When governors and so on issue edicts, they know that there are nonprofits who help to provide the services to the community that the government, whether it's the city government, the county government, the state government, or the federal government, want to do. This president just doesn't know that part of it because he ran his own business and was an empire unto himself. He didn't really know how government is structured. So nonprofits, what the hell is that? He probably has, most of his companies are probably incorporated as nonprofit to be tax exempt, but he doesn't understand that nonprofits are charitable organizations that exist to provide a service to the community, and that they have to find their own funding. Whether that funding is issued through grants, through the federal government, through the state government, or they have to apply for grants from funding organizations and charitable organizations. It is what it is. And thank God for nonprofits. Thank God somebody had a dream that they can help people with disabilities. Thank God somebody had a dream that they can help children who are autistic and provide support to parents who have quadriplegic children. I heard a story last year about a couple who were getting divorced. When the woman was pregnant with a second child, she was in a car accident. The child was born naturally challenged, physically challenged. As he grew, he was developmentally disabled. Do you know the husband was leaving her to take care, and so he wouldn't have to deal with the emotional and physical requirements of helping her to take care of that child? She's going to have to stop working, and he wouldn't pay as much to ensure that at least she could pay for someone to be with him. She would literally have to stop working to help raise that child and take care of him because he requires round-the-clock monitoring and support. Can you believe that? These things happen. So now she will have to go to a support group who is going to lead her to a nonprofit who provides what? Support for parents and children like hers. That's how important and integral nonprofits are. They provide grief support sometimes when we are hurting from the loss of losing a loved one, whether that's a parent, a spouse, or a child. There are nonprofits that provide support in times of need, not just Meals on Wheels, but also help people to pay their light bill, pay their water bill, help to pay their property taxes. Like in the city of Detroit, property taxes are exponential. Why? Because again, it's a question of implicit bias. That's all that it comes down to. It's straight out fact racism to marginalize people of color from owning property. It is what it is. It is what it is. The mayor is a white man, the rest of the people are black. No, it started before, but he didn't change it. In fact, water lockoffs took place under his administration. What is that? If they were white and looked like you, would you have turned the damn water off? No. Right? So when you look at these things, these are the issues. This is what nonprofits do. And now some of them are not just facing temporary closure. Some of them might be closed permanently, because if you're not there to get the reporting requirements that are part of the requirements of your grant, and you haven't satisfied the requirements of your grant, by the time we get back to normal and you have to submit your funding for the next fiscal year, you probably are not going to be able to do that. Some of them are, and these are agencies that provide services right on the ground. There's one I became familiar with in, I think it's in Oakland, California, Housing for Moms, Moms for Housing. And they started out of one woman who could not afford to live anywhere, though she's working. She and her children, and they were homeless. And they were squatting from unoccupied house to unoccupied house. And then she sat down and formed her own nonprofit and became a vocal voice to bring attention to the fact that a lot of the homeless folks have children who are in school. They are working, but they can't afford the high rents. right? And what happened was she brought a lot of attention to that. So now people are like, okay, if we have a problem, we go to her. She now intercedes between the city government and these folks, and they have actually worked out a plan where they are going to provide housing for women and children in that area. That's what nonprofits do. If you have a need in your community, I guarantee that there is a nonprofit that can provide support services for that need. And nonprofits are dying because we lack funding, because our donors are not flush with funds anymore, because they are caught up in this rabid pandemic that has spread across all our communities across the country. Our land needs healing indeed. And I'm praying for those who are caught up in this. It's all of us, because it doesn't just stop. Just when you thought it had, you drew a corner and you could see the light, you hear about more cases, and there are more people and more people whom you know. So I'm saying to all of us, as you go about your business, take precautions and be mindful of the fact of others and yourself could become are liable to be infected, and that we must take care to preserve life for all of us. This too will pass, but it's going to be a minute, and we're going to be caught up in this. Be kind to one another, right? I saw recently in New York where people gathered to watch the SSS Comfort, the USS Comfort, to dock in New York Harbor. We never thought we would see that on our shores, right? Our own military had to send a hospital ship to help one of the greatest cities in the world. Unbelievable. But these are the times. This is humbling. Nonprofits do the work that government agencies can't do. Oftentimes, they're the ones, the workers in those establishments, are the ones touching the people that nobody else wants to touch. You see the mayor on TV, but you don't see the workers who are touching the homeless, and the workers who are bringing relief, and the workers who are dropping meals off. You don't see the workers on TV who are counseling and talking people off the ledge, people who would have committed suicide and who wanted to check out of here because life is so bad. You see the mayor on TV, but you don't see the workers in shelters who have to embrace people who are out of their minds, running from rabid violence in their homes. There's somebody threatening you with a gun, robbing you of food to eat, robbing you of peace and security and safety. That's the work of nonprofits. Maybe that's why folks who run nonprofits have often thought that one of the criteria to deliver services to the people has to be compassion. It's inherent. You can't help it but look at the need and say, I am going to do something about that need. I am going to fix this, and I'm going to find a way to deal with this. You use whatever means are at your disposal, and you do something because we need you. So if you have a nonprofit and you're sitting at home like, I don't even have $10,000 left, and I can't even pay everybody. If I pay everybody, I'm not going to have any money for next month. I can't even pay my own bills. I feel you. I get you. Thank you for what you have done. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for calling one more donor. Thank you for coming up with ideas that will sustain your organization, because we need you. You provide services to folks that people would not even dream of. Most of us go to bed at night and we don't know what it takes to be able to help others who are in need. So I know a lot of us are in need right now. I know maybe you had to call unemployment this morning to get a check. Here in Michigan, the unemployment website crashed yesterday. It's not funny. It's not even remotely funny. The unemployment website crashed because so many new applications for unemployment were happening. Not the ones from last week or the week before. These are the new ones. Go figure. These are indeed trying times. If the state website crashes, imagine what nonprofits are going through. Most of us have had to take out of our own funds, take out of our pockets to help others. But somebody has to do it. And we do it with empathy and compassion and with joy that we stopped somebody from jumping off a ledge. So I say to you today, if you come across a nonprofit in your area, in your community, that is providing services, I know that you think, well, how can I help? What can I do? You start right where you are. Go to their website, make a donation. If it's going to be $5 or $10, you have no idea what that feels like when you receive that. It means that somebody else sees your vision and is helping you to achieve that. So go to their websites and help them as they deliver services. It's not too long in the future to see where the Red Cross is going to set up a tent and start taking in people who have just families who have nothing but the clothes on their backs. People are going to lose their possessions as rabid landlords start putting people out. If you can help someone, please help. I ask you if you can. If you're in a position where you have more than enough that can take care of you and your family for 6 months, 12 months, 12 years, please, I ask you to help someone else who can. We're all in this together. It's not as if there's a spaceship that is going to come and going to take some of us out and we're going to go to this new planet where none of this stuff happens. I dare say, even if that were to happen, you probably would be looking back at some of the folks you would leave here on earth. I am saying that we're all in this together. If nothing else, let this time prove to us how interdependent we really are on one another. Yes, we're going to find out tomorrow. I'm doing a show on the wealthy who are fleeing the city and flying out of the cities and leaving homes and so on and going into communities, into enclaves where they are. Is it fair? No. But let us focus right here where we are on how we can help. Recently, one of my donors called me because she was cleaning out her house and she asked if we needed clothes. And I'm like, we always need clothes. So we went and got clothes and for the people who come into our facility, right? It was so kind of her, right? Maybe she doesn't have money to give, but she has clothes. It's not the first time she has given. She's always given. You see things like that and you have to give thanks. You have to give thanks that it is what it is. So I ask you today, go to my website, theexodusfoundation.com, theexodusfoundation.com. It's going to talk about Harriet Kemmick. So because there are other Exodus foundations out there, all of a sudden, there just seems to be a myriad of them. But go to theexodusfoundation.com and make a donation. Help us to continue to provide services. And while you're at it, say, hey, this is why, because it helps all of us. There are people who are providing meals. There are people who are going to seniors' homes to make sure, just to call them, to make sure that they're okay. Just to say, hey, how are you doing? Do you need anything? And then finding an organization that provides services, whether they need meals delivered or they need groceries delivered or they're out of their medications. Some of them are out of their depends. Somebody has to do it. These were things that they would do. They would just get up, go in their cars, go down to the pharmacy, buy what they want, go down to the grocery store, and they can't do that now. Well, that's where nonprofits come in. That's part of what we do. We help others who can't help themselves. So I ask you today, as you look at me, it was me one time who was in need. My mother came to my need when I needed to be delivered from violence. It was my mother who came and said, I'm going to take you to my house in Detroit and I'm going to make sure you and your children are fine. You'll never have to go through this again unless you choose to. But as long as you live, this will never happen to you again. She became a nonprofit because she didn't do it because she was going to make money. She didn't do it for the glory. She did it because it was the humane thing to do. That's what I'm asking us to do, is to be humane and help one another. Because there are folks who need our help. There are homeless folks right now who don't have access to a shower. There are homeless women who have periods, y'all. They have children and young girls who have periods and can't have a shower. There are families who are disintegrating because they can't live together. Because when you sometimes go into a shelter, they split up the families. If you have a son, he goes somewhere else and the mother goes somewhere else. That is forever and a day one of the worst feelings in the world. Sometimes you lose your children to violence on the streets because they are trying to figure out how they want to survive. Sometimes you lose your daughters to human trafficking because they think they don't want to sleep in a tent and they don't want to sleep in a shelter. So if they're 14 or 15, they try to figure it out for themselves. So I'm asking, be kind. If you're a landlord, we're all in this together. You need people's rent in order to get to, so you can understand where they are. Work with people. Don't put them out. Don't do that. It's going to bother you. It's going to sit on you. And don't say it's not going to bother you, and your children are going to pay for putting out anybody during this crisis. If you're a parent and a child is calling you because they might have to come back home, answer that call. If you're a grandparent and your grown children who have lived on their own suddenly find themselves without, and they're going to call you to come back home, help. We're all in this together. This is about all of us. And while I send you peace and love and light from a holy God, I also send you love and compassion. And I encourage all of us that this too shall pass. It's going to take a minute to go through it. It's going to be a little icky in the meantime, but hold on. Look up higher and run to God. He's our safety. My name is Harriet Kamek. Thank you so much for sticking with me on this Wednesday morning. On this Wednesday morning is the first day of April. Let it not fool us. Let us not be fooled, but let us live in anticipation that we're going to get through this. Thank you so much, everybody. Stay home. Stay home saves lives. Stay home. Don't go out to the clubs. Don't go partying, have friends over. Don't go over to friends. Don't have family gatherings. Stay home. It's going to be all right. It's going to be okay. Thanks so much, everybody. Be blessed. Hey.